For people that might not know what that is, animal-based, we've heard a lot of stuff about, as I have my bone broth delivered to me here, we heard a lot about the carnivore diet recently. There are some people that take it. I was training with Sean Baker this past weekend, right? He takes it to the extreme. He eats just ribeye for the past 8 years, I think. But animal-based, I guess, is it's a question. Where is animal-based on that spectrum, and how do you advocate for this diet, and or what reasons?
Yeah, so animal-based is kind of between carnivore and paleo in some sense. So carnivore is one end of the spectrum, which is just animal products or even just meat for some people. And I wrote a book about the carnivore diet. I did a carnivore diet myself originally for 1.5 years and had my own journey doing a strictly carnivorous diet. So I ate meat, I ate organs, I ate animal fat, I ate salt, and maybe eggs sometimes, and essentially nothing else. And I mean that, essentially nothing else for 1.5 years. I learned a lot about which foods affect me and my autoimmune issues, which are eczema, asthma, and allergies, part of what's called an atopic triad in Western medicine. Because I had pretty bad eczema at times in medical school, when I was a child, in my residency. And it wasn't until my residency at the University of Washington, I'm a traditionally trained medical doctor, that I had a really bad eczema flare. And I just got fed up and said, I've heard about this carnivore diet. I'm just going to eat meat and maybe eggs occasionally and liver and animal fat and salt and see what happens. And like you said, you got to a point where you were just eating nothing but meat and coffee. Yeah. Like, that's very powerful, because there are a lot of foods that are triggering our autoimmune conditions or our gut issues, our skin issues, sleep disturbances, even psychiatric illnesses can be related to food sensitivities that we never think of as problematic. Most people know that processed food equals bad. Yeah. And a lot of us still eat processed food, but most of us know. But what's interesting about carnivore and now animal-based, which is sort of my evolution from there, is that there are foods that are traditionally considered healthy, whether it's grains, like bread, whole grains, right? It's the bottom of the food pyramid. That's healthy for humans. Or whether it's things like spinach with oxalates, or other vegetables, or oats, or whatever, that are considered healthy, that can be problematic for a lot of people. Coffee, considered healthy by most people, but can irritate the gut in some people. Yeah. The thing that happened for me was that after 1.5 years on a carnivore diet, I learned about this eczema. The eczema got better, and I developed kind of long-term, low-carb side effects. I had muscle cramps. I had sleep disturbance related to palpitations, so heart fluttering. My sex hormones were going down, so my testosterone went from around 700, 800 to about 500. And like, I was getting, when I would climb on rocks, I'd get like muscle cramps in the morning, and I always felt a little bit cold. I was living in San Diego at the time that I made the shift, and San Diego was kind of always that like maritime climate, 60s, low 70s, which I think most humans with a normal body temperature should be able to handle just fine. It should be ideal, but I was always just a little bit cold. And in retrospect, I know that was my thyroid underperforming. And at some point, I just had to look at all of that constellation and say, hey, I need to add back carbohydrates, because my body is not holding on to electrolytes. My body is not holding on to sodium, potassium, chloride, magnesium. We need an insulin signal at the level of our kidneys to hold on to those, quote, electrolytes. We really do. And I see this over and over and over in the carnivore community now, that people end up with really bad issues related to electrolyte insufficiency, and they end up taking massive amounts of salt, or they have palpitations, which are again related to electrolyte insufficiency. And our body cares a lot about sodium, and our body cares a lot about chloride and calcium and magnesium, and it keeps those things at very tight ranges. And so it's working very hard to buffer and to manage those. And if we can't hold on to sodium first, and then chloride and calcium and magnesium, a lot of things get out of whack. People get swelling in their legs, people get, like I said, sleep disturbances. And then without carbohydrates, we really are not giving our bodies a signal of abundance. And people may debate that, but we can dig into it more. And you see things like sex hormones go down, and you see thyroid hormones go down invariably. Like, show me someone on a keto diet, I will show you someone with a lower testosterone than they have eating carbohydrates. And I will show you someone with a higher sex hormone binding globulin than when they're eating carbohydrates. SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, binds up free sex hormones and decreases decreases your free androgen index. So it decreases, both estrogen and testosterone bioavailability in the human body. And that goes up when you restrict carbs. So you have less of these sex hormones to do the things that they're supposed to do. And I will show you someone with lower than optimal thyroid hormones. And you have to look at T3 and T4. And so I added back fruit to my diet first, and then honey, and then raw milk. And I thought, okay, this is a good in-between space. Like, it's still not having grains, right? So I'm not having oats and wheat. And I'm still, saying that, like, I think a lot of the vegetables weren't really doing me a lot of favors. I still don't eat spinach. I still don't eat kale.
Yeah.
I don't eat vegetables, but I am going to eat some carbohydrates. And I started with the fruit and the honey because they're more digestible. And we can talk about concerns people have with those things that I don't think are founded in science. But I've been eating an animal-based diet, which I just kind of thought would be a good in-between space for people. Still very low plant toxin load and very digestible for most people, but lots of nutrients from the meat and the organs, and then carbohydrates and minerals that I wasn't getting previously, alkaline minerals from the fruit and the fruit juice and the honey. So I think of an animal-based diet, and I wanted to characterize an animal-based diet as meat, organs, because I think organs are still super important. All the businesses I build are helping people get more organs in their diet. Meat and organs, fruit, honey, and raw dairy. That's the way that I just kind of arbitrarily created this thing called an animal-based diet, just so people can talk about that. Now, when I'm working with people, I mentioned I'm doing this documentary, and we're having people do an animal-based challenge for 30 days. I always say to them, the goal is to have the most varied, interesting, fun diet that you possibly can. But I think for a lot of people, an animal-based diet is a really good place to start. And some people end up still eating animal-based, but a lot of people can add back some steamed broccoli every once in a while. No big deal. Or they'll add back sweet potatoes. Or if they really love spinach, maybe they'll add back spinach. That's one of the ones I'm not a huge fan of. Right. But and if they want to add back grains, they might add back grains with intention and awareness of the way they should detoxify those grains. If you look at human history, whenever we've eaten grains, only the last 15,000 years, we always fermented them and sprouted them. And our ancestors, our history, our predecessors knew, like, plant seeds are not easy for humans to digest. They have tons of anti-nutrients, and you really do need to detoxify them if you're going to eat them. Right. So now I kind of am expanding this perspective. And you and I talked about early before the podcast that I rebranded. I don't do the CarnivoreMD thing anymore because I want to be more open-minded. And I celebrate when I know people who can eat sourdough bread and they don't have issues with it. It doesn't work well for me. Yeah. But I think that if people want to eat grains, understand that you should probably ferment those grains. So that's kind of the addition on top of the animal base. And then you start to look more like a Weston A. Price type of philosophy. These are all just, monikers that help us, shorthand what we're actually talking about. But I still basically eat animal based.